Hey everybody, it's Professor Triplet. I hope you guys are doing well. I am sitting at home in the office where I am uh, spending a lot of time these days. So, why don't we spend some time together here and let's talk about game modeling. Okay, so what are we looking at right here? Well, this is a game model. It's not really actually. This is probably the high poly model that would be used as a game model. And that's what we're going to talk about. How do you get something like this to go into a game engine? Because all this hair, all these little small details, they need to be transferred into stuff like bump maps. And particularly for games, we call them normal maps. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And I'm going to show you an example of how you would do that. So let's go ahead and first look at the Wikipedia. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but just to show you, this is typically, if you look over here on the right side of the screen, this is typically how a normal map will usually look. Something like this. So in this example, they took this little setup here and then they took a flat plane, and what you do is you can project the normals of the surface from one object to the other object, and then it gets read into RG and B channels in a color swatch, basically, or color texture. And it works really, really well for certain things, and then there's other things it doesn't work well with. So if you look at this right here, this is a great example. They're showing kind of the lighting moving back and forth. Obviously, the normal map is not going to cast the same kind of shadow that an actual piece of geometry would, and it doesn't have a profile. So when it comes to stuff like this, if you need something like a cone that sticks way off the surface, it doesn't work so well. But when it comes to something maybe like this little tube or this little piece right here, this little square piece, these actually it's not so bad for. And that's what we're gonna talk a little bit about, that kind of stuff and how do we do that and where can we do that and stuff like that. So before we get started, I just want to show you guys a few things here. So one thing that people like to do a lot of work with is ZBrush, and we've talked about this a little bit before in the past, but you can get a free trial, just so you know. I want you guys to realize that you can bake normal maps from high poly meshes that you make in ZBrush. You can do it also in Maya too. We're actually going to look at how to do it in Maya, but I just wanted to show you guys this. And if you're gonna do that, then you probably want to get one of these. Get a Wacom Intuos. Now look at this. I'm B&H right now. Well, it says more on the way. I don't know if it's, if there's more or whatever. But this is all you need to work in ZBrush. Just a little tablet, and you connect it to your computer, and you can see right there they're using a Mac, and they're drawing. You could draw, you could sculpt, but ZBrush is, I'm not saying it's useless without a tablet, but it's really not great without a tablet. It's a lot better to have a tablet. But if you look right here, like Best Buy, they got them for $80. B&H has them for $60 if they have any in stock. So if you look around, you might find one that's a decent price. But this literally is all I had when I went through my undergrad. It looked a little bit different back then, but I still got my original Wacom tablet. I've moved up, and I have a bigger one. My newer one looks probably more like this. But I actually use Cintiqs now. So a Cintiq you guys have all seen because you sit in front of them in 340 in Kanoi, and this is basically a Cintiq. Wow, 16-inch creative to play. That's really good price. $649 for a Cintiq for a 16-inch one. I think that's a 16-inch one. That might be smaller than that, but that's actually a really good price. They're very expensive, as you can see. Like, to get a really big one is quite expensive. So wow, $130. That's cheap. It's on eBay. Be careful. Okay. Anyway, you don't have to have a Cintiq. In fact, I learned on a tablet like this, and I used a tablet like this professionally for years. I actually, when I was working in the game industry, I was not using a Cintiq. I was using a tablet this size, basically, and it worked fine, and I did professional work with it. And there's many professionals. There's some people that actually prefer to use a tablet versus a Cintiq because they don't want to put their hand over the artwork. I think for concept artists, they probably prefer using a Cintiq, but for somebody like a digital sculptor or whatever, you don't necessarily have to do that. You don't have to do it for concept art too. I know concept artists that use a tablet. So, okay, so just want to show you some of that stuff, and I'm going to show you what we're going to kind of talk about today. And so here's an example of somebody who created a nice high poly tire, and they've got like bolts and everything, and they've got, you know, all the detail that you would want from a real tire. But then they took like a low poly cage. You can see the low poly cage right here, and they bake all this color information and normal map information right from that this high poly tire to a low poly cage. So how does that work? Let's actually get into Maya and let's look at that. All right. So here, I've got a scene here, and this is very, very simple. I've just got this little setup of balls here. And I've actually even set up some lights. It's going to kind of look reminiscent of what a normal map looks like. It won't be perfect, but it'll look reminiscent. So if I hit render on my keyboard here, you can see right here, it kind of looks like a normal map. So what we just saw. Let's do it one more time. So pretty close, not exactly, and I'll explain the difference. But basically, what's happening is that when you do a normal map, or when you create a normal map, anything that's facing like the positive X direction will get a completely red color, and then in the red channel, it'll fade off to black if it's facing in the opposite direction. And anything that's facing in the positive Z direction, or I should say Y, it would be Y. It depends on the program, but typically they all work out when you get them to the game engine. But so in this case, this is actually the Z. So anything that's in the up and down direction is going to be the blue. So I have a light here that's firing 100% blue, and then I have a light here that's firing 100% green. And so that's how I'm getting this to look sort of like a normal map. It's not perfect, but if I pull out my low poly plane, Shift H, what I can do is I can do a transfer map that will basically, it'll take the normal direction of these spheres, and it will cast it onto this piece right here on top, and it will look like that colorful map, but it will define for a game engine or like a real-time renderer, even Maya's viewport, it will define what direction the light is, like a different normal that the light is hitting. So, you know, in this case where we're actually looking at the pieces, obviously there's geometry there, but you'll get this definition without that being there. So what does that actually look like? Let's actually just do a really quick example. So you have to go into your rendering tab, and mine is off screen again. Okay. All right, I take that back. It was not off screen. I just forgot to hit the next button. So I went ahead and went to lighting and shading and hit transfer maps, and then this popped up. I was mistaken. I had a problem yesterday where this thing popped up off screen, and I had to do some tricks to get it back into my viewport. Anyway, so what we want to do is, this is basically going to, you could basically bake color, you can bake displacement, you can bake normals, you can bake lighting, you can bake alpha. But what we're going to want to bake is we're going to actually do light. Well, we'll do lighting and normals. I have them both set up. Let me remove the one map. Okay. The way this works is I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to hit, just to clear everything, I'm going to hit remove selected. So you select the object that you want to bake to. So this says target mesh. This is the target that you want to bake the high poly to, and you say add selected. And then it comes up in here, and you can see the name of it. And that's the name of the UV set, and then it's got the name of the mesh right there, example LP shape. And then you go to the source mesh, and then you just grab this, and it has to all be one piece. Obviously, this isn't separate spheres. I combine them all together, and you just hit add selected. And now that we have the two of those, you could go ahead. Let me just we'll start over. I can go ahead and hit this. and it will go to add a normal map. Now, I don't like the initial settings that they have in here, so what I do is I change it, and I will jump into the right file here and save it over. Now, see, it says alias pics. I'm actually going to make it a Targa. You guys know I love Targas. Anybody who's been in this class long enough. So I'm going to make this one the normals. So you can see I already baked one before. And yes, I want to replace it. So that's actually what it's going to look like. And then I will make a shaded one because I'm using lighting. So if you're using lighting, you have to use the shaded. And I'll do the same process here. And I'm going to just change this to Targa. And then there's this one right here. And that's the one. Yes, I'll replace it. Okay. So what it's going to do, like I said, it's going to cast rays up to here, but it's going to be based on the normal direction of the surfaces below. So you got a high poly and a low poly. Now, the lighting one is just kind of an example of sort of what's going on. It's not a perfect example, but I'll show you in a second how this works. Okay, so all I have to do now, because this is set up, I've got my target mesh, I've got my source mesh, is I just hit bake. And down in the corner here, you see there's a little bar in the lower left-hand corner that tells me the progress of the baking. And we have just baked a cake. Okay, that was stupid. I'm sorry. All right. Now, I already have these open, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and open them again. This is the non-proper one. This is the one I got from Lighting. It's basically, this is sort of showing what's happening. What's happening is like it's going and casting a red light going in the X direction, and then it goes to black. Now, the problem with this one is if you go over to our channels here and we go to the red channel, you can see that it doesn't go to black, it goes to gray, and that's because the way the lights work is that if once it gets past this 90-degree mark, it doesn't light up anything back here. So it doesn't actually make it any darker. Same thing with the green, and then the blue is being cast basically straight down at it. Okay, so the blue actually is correct. This is fine because it's hitting the whole surface, but the red and the green are not hitting the whole surface. It's not important that you guys understand that, but if you were to go ahead and take and make like a gradient, so what I did basically here is I went ahead and, let me hide those. I went ahead and did a gradient here. Let's pull this bar here. Did a gradient from black to white, so I have it from black to white, and I went like so. It's actually going to go the other way. We want to go this way. If I did that, and then I went to my channels, now if I go to my red channel, you can see that that would actually come out correctly. So I've already done that. Let me hide that, and that's on this layer. So let's go into this layer. So this is what the normal map should look like. So when we look at, so this is the lighting one that I baked out. This is the actual normal map that I baked out. And you can see when you compare the two of these, I'll just drag this into here. Oops, we got to deselect there. Okay, drag that into there. So when we look at these two together, so they almost look identical. It's pretty close. Okay. At least this little area right there. Okay, so I'm trying to just show you sort of how this works. If you go into the channels of this one, you see that the red starts 100% white and goes to black. Now, when this is in the computer, this is in the like any kind of viewport that's reading it, like OpenGL or DirectX, like game engines usually use DirectX. This will read that anything that's 100% white in the red channel is facing a certain direction, and then anything that's 100% black in the red channel is facing the opposite direction, and so on and so forth. So the green channel would be like saying that all the Y information, if it's white, the Y information will be facing this way. If it's black in the green channel, it's facing the opposite way, and then the blue channel is going straight down. So let's hide the green so you can see like that. So anyway, that's kind of the technical thing behind it. I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot of math you can get into. If you look at that Wikipedia page, they actually explain all the math and everything. It's all up here. But it's all like tangent and bitangent. And anyway, I didn't want to get into all of that. I just wanted to kind of give a representation of what is going on here. And then I wanted to give a practical example. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and just close this, and we'll just start a new file. So new scene. And let's go and get a reference. So I always like to work from reference. So we're going to go ahead and put in, I'm going to put in block wood. I don't know if this is going to come up what I want. Probably not. Yeah, actually, this is what I want. I want something like this. Okay, so like a children's block like this. Let's do something like that. Let's do, should we do A? Should we do B? I don't know. Let's actually find out. See which one come up with. All right, so I'm going to show my grid again really quick. I've modified my grid so it looks a little bit different here. And I'm going to go ahead and make a cube. And I'm going to make it 5 centimeters, which is about 2 inches. It's almost exactly 2 inches. And that should be good for that. So this is going to be my low poly cube. So what I'm going to do is name this LP. I'll just say cube or block LP. You know, let's name it something weird. We're going to call it X block LP. That way I can find it. The LP stands for low poly. And now I'm going to duplicate that. Control D. And this one's going to be HP, high poly. Why did I actually write it out? I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to hide this one. Control H. And now this one I'm going to do something with. Let's go ahead and make something cool with this. So I'm going to grab all the 90-degree angles, which is all of them because it's a box. And I'm going to do a bevel. Not that much. I'm going to take note at how much I bevel it. So 0.2, I think that'll work. Let's do one extra segment there. Okay, and that should be good. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my cut tool, hold shift and control, and I'm just going to, this is my high poly one, so I'm going to just cut in the middle there, like so. All right. And then let's see how that looks so far. That looks good. So I just hit 3 on my keyboard. And object mode. Let's go to face. I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard. And I'm going to go ahead and select all these faces. If you want to do this fast, you can go to like front view. And then you can just hold control and shift and go like that. And then go to right view, hold control and shift and oops. Control shift to go like that. Go to top view. And this way you're not like running through and having to select everything. So now I should have everything, because I just drag in the middle and it grabs everything behind it. Okay, so if I take this and I go ahead and do let's do an extrude. Let's see what happens if we just extrude it in a little bit, like so. And then let me click on the scale and we'll just extrude it a little by that, like that. All right, now I'll explain something about normal maps. Okay, when this goes to bake out to the other surface, if I didn't just angle it in, if I didn't just scale it in like I did right there, the surface area that would be turning here that's going to bake out would just be like this little crisp line when it bakes. But once I scale this in a little bit, when I do the extrude and then scale this in a little bit so you get a little angle here, you'll actually see this in the end results better, because you'll have like this nice gradient that happens from this edge right here to this edge right here. Let's go to edges. This edge right here to this edge right here. This gradient, the normals for this, the way the angle that this is at will show up. But if I didn't do that extrude in or scale in on the extrude, then you would just get this one little tiny crisp line and it wouldn't look as good. So that's why I did that. I know that from experience. So I'm just sharing with you guys, because you might say, well, why did you extrude in, or why did you bevel it in? It wasn't just only for modeling purposes. It was actually for the end results. I know it's going to work better. I'm actually going to try to extrude this in one more time, like so. And I think that should be good. Now let me check this now. If I hit 3, okay, so you can see for the blocks purposes, this would look rounded, and obviously it's not exactly what I want. So the way that I can fix this is I could go ahead and let's just do a You know, let's, I think if I undo, hold on a second, let me undo that. Let me do this. I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball these and, whoa, what happened? Maya, why weren't you cutting correctly? That was weird. You guys see that? All right, let's undo a few things here. What did I do? That was weird. All right, we're going to start over here. So I got an error there. Now that's obviously, I don't think I did anything wrong. I think it was just, I don't know, something wasn't going right. So I'm just going to redo that one step that I did. Like pull that in a little bit. Okay. That was strange. Let me delete the history, freeze the transformations. There we go. Hopefully that'll fix stuff. I'm going to do it like that. I'll just snap it there. So the reason why I'm doing this part right here is it's going to hold the edges so that we don't get that round shape in the middle. It's going to be more of a square shape. So now if I hit 3, see that? See how it's nice and square? Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so that looks more like the block. All right, so let's go faces. Okay, so see how we got this? We already have all these selected. I'm going to put 2 materials on this. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and I'm going to say new material. And you guys know what I love. I love the blends. Actually, this time I'm actually going to just do a Lambert. As much as I love blends. We'll go and find it. It's way over here in the end. And I'm just going to give this like an arbitrary color for now. Kind of like a wood color. And that should work. And I'll call this M_block center. Like that. Okay. Now I'm going to hit Control-Shift-I. It's going to grab the inverse. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give this a material. Go assign new material. We'll do a blend, or I mean a Lambert again. Just so used to using those blends. All right, we'll call this one block edges. That's fine. Okay, so now we know which ones are which. In this one, we're going to make red. All right, now let's hit 6 on the keyboard. There we go. Now we got something going on here. Come on. Object mode. Okay, so the UVs for this object don't really matter. But the UVs for the low poly one will, because we're baking to the UVs. So we got to make sure that has UVs. This one doesn't really matter though. Okay, I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard for right now. I'm going to go grab all the faces, and just because I like to see it better, I'm going to go, oops, we're still in rendering. Let's go to modeling and change this to soften edge. And you'll see that if you've done your modeling right, even if you've like, it still looks pretty close to the final results that we're going to be getting. So that's not bad. Now we're baking, so if you're baking to a low poly, there's, you don't have to worry about perfect topology. You just has to make sure that it looks good in the render, and then that will work. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is we're going to put a letter in there. So let's get our text tool out. I'm going to go in the front view, and I'm going to get my text tool out. And there we go. We got that. All right. 3D type. That's huge. Let's just leave it at 3. And I'm not sure I love that font. So, and this is where I lose it, because I was never meant to be a graphic artist, because I can never decide on a font. It's terrible. It's like a terrible thing. You know what? I'm just going to do it on this one. This one's fine. It looks interesting to me. Okay, now let's look at this in 3 dimensions, because this is, this does have some dimensions to it. As we all know, let's go to the geometry and enable beveling. We can do something like that. And that's probably going to work. I don't think I really need to do much more. So let's just go ahead and scale it to the right size. Let's just scale it down so it's about the right size. I'm going to go in my front view again. Let's turn on wireframe, hitting 4 on my keyboard. And I'll just pull this in, and we'll try to center it. I'm just kind of looking at my grid. And center it in the middle there. Let's see. That looks pretty good. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We're just having fun here. Happy little clouds. Okay, that's a Bob Ross reference if you didn't know. Okay, I'm going to go to the right view, Oops. And I want to make sure that this is sticking out, but I don't want it out as far as the block. I'm just going to leave it just kind of like that. So here's the nice thing about doing these normal maps like this. We can get the normal information from this and this block onto this low poly without even like making this, we don't have to literally merge all the vertices or anything with this other mesh. We can just combine these two and it will work. Okay, so I can go ahead and go assign existing material, and we'll make it that color material. Was it block edges? So there we go. Okay, so now we're going to duplicate this because we want one on the other side. Control D. And we'll have to do a little spinny spin here. Let me go ahead and just center pivot this. That's probably be easier. And I'll hold J down, and then it will lock it to increments, and if you have it set up the right way. So let's go back to that right view, and we'll just make sure that this isn't going out past the edge, so it's about the same. Okay, we are very close to being ready to bake. What we need to do next is, I'm going to do this actually. Let me take these two, and I'm going to just triangulate them. Mesh, triangulate. You don't have to do this step if you're staying in Maya, but just in case you were sending it out somewhere and you wanted to do baking outside of Maya. By the way, Maya, I'm going to say, is just tell you guys now, it's not really a great baking tool. My favorite baking tool by far is a program called Marmoset Toolbag. But they have free baking tools as well that are better than Maya. So I actually have that up here. This is XNormal. You can download this for free, xnormal.net. And it's very easy to use. It's very, very easy to use. You can just watch. I'm sure there's tutorials on how to use it. But if you're having problems, if you try to do this and you're trying to bake with Maya and it's giving you problems, this will help, because this is way better. But there's still even better, which is like Marmoset's by far the best one I've ever used. And Marmoset is so fast, which is so nice. Okay, so let's go here. I've triangulated that. So if I wanted to, I could probably smooth it, but I think I'm just going to leave it alone. And I'm going to take this, though, and I'm going to go mesh, and I'm going to go smooth. And I'll do it at like 2 divisions. There we go. That'll work. Okay, so now that's like basically that is smooth baked in, right? So now it's literally that many polys. I'm not hitting 3 on my keyboard. I think if you hit 3, I think it does bake properly. I think if you're using the smooth preview, it will bake out smooth, but I'm not sure, so I'm just like making sure that this works right. So we just grab all of these, and we'll take these and say combine. And then now it is time to, let's clean this up first. Let's delete the history and freeze the transformations. And let's get our low poly out. Shift H. And remember what we first did when we beveled? I said I was gonna take note of the size of the bevel. So it was 0.2. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna just bevel this once. Like that. Okay, so now at 0.2, it's almost, you can see it's almost identical. Now this is important. When you're baking, you have to make a cage around the object you're baking from. So you have to have your low poly cage. That's what they usually call the nomenclature is low poly cage. Let me see if we can get that. There we go. Okay. This is so good because it's basically almost exactly the same because I remember the numbers and everything. So I don't really have to do anything to fix this. But if I wanted to make it a little bit bigger so that just to give it some room, I can go to Edit Mesh and go to Transform, and then just pull on the Z axis, the blue axis, and I can pull it out just a tiny bit. And then now I know that this cage is engulfing the other object. So this other object needs to be, you want it to be able to like project off the surface out. And that's the best way. And then the last thing I want to do is go to Mesh Display and Soften Edge. Just make sure all these edges are softened, because you got to make sure your normals are correct before you go ahead and start baking. So now that this looks nice and soft like that, it's ready to bake. Now let's look at those UVs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the UVs. But what I am actually going to do is, instead of leaving it like this, I'm going to take all the faces. I'm actually just going to do an automatic unwrap. Now I wouldn't normally do this. I would probably give a little bit more care, but because we're limited on time, I do want to show you, like when you're baking, like the normal maps, if done correctly, it will go across the seams, and you also, like, the numbers will be contained within here, so everything should be good. So we'll see how this turns out. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, by the way, I should show you this. If you're a game modeler, you want to make sure that you are respecting UV space all the time, because it's all memory and it's all got to get loaded in real time, and you have to be efficient. Okay, and so you do need a little space from the edge usually when you're doing stuff like this. So make sure you have a little space. But this thing did it just fine, so we don't have to really worry too much about that. All right, so now we're ready. We are ready to bake. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'll actually save this file out just so in case any goofball stuff happens, we're ready to rip and roll right afterwards. Otherwise, I'll have to remake everything. So yeah, save often, save in iterations. So we're gonna call this week 12 underscore block bake. All right. And we'll put normals in there so I know what the topic was. Okay. So we're going to get the color and we're going to get the normal map from that. So let's go back to our rendering. And let's go back to our lighting and shading transfer maps. Now, like I said, I usually don't bake in this program, but it will work. It can work, so it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and say, just because I like to be complete, I'm going to go remove and then add, make sure it's got the right one. Source mesh, I will select this one. I don't like the name of that. Let's rename it. Put that as HP. I always try to keep these names so you don't get confused. Or so whoever's using it doesn't get confused. Remove selected and then add selected. Okay, so you just look up here. We've got the correct names in there. And then this is going to bake out. We'll call this week 12 block. And then this one is the normal map. So we'll say, I'm just going to put an N. That's what I used to do when I was in the game industry. I always an underscore N at the end always meant that. So here I'm going to just go week 12 underscore block, and then there, and then so that should be good. So let's go ahead and one thing I didn't show before is when you first make these, usually there's this connect map to shaders is checked. I unchecked that. Oh, this is a lit and shaded. So okay, you know what? I made a mistake here. We don't want that. I'm going to get that out of here. I actually want to diffuse. That was for the lighting one that I had in the last one. So let's redo that. I don't want it to be lit. It's just the diffuse color. So let's go up here and back to source images, and then I'm gonna name it because I have to rename it because it didn't make that yet. So block, and we'll call it color. Okay, this is usually checked, so you want to uncheck that, and then it's going to have common outputs. Now it starts at 256 usually. It goes 256 by 256. That's the size of your map. That's too small for me. I don't want it that small, so I'm making this bigger. You can make it even bigger than that if you want. And the sampling quality, if I get a good bake, then typically I would want to turn it up, but Maya's really slow. That's why I said it's not good at baking. It's just super, super slow. It's kind of terrible. So you can do it, but it's just not great. That's why I'm not going to put it by 8x8 because it'll take forever. And then filter size, you want to put this as low as you can, which is 1, and then make sure your fill seam you have at least, like I have 4 pixels there. So that's gonna basically extend past the UV's 4 pixels. So that's what all those things mean. So basically you do all those steps, and let's see here. You want tangent space normals for this too. Don't do object space, do tangent space. And I think we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and hit bake, and then we'll see what happens. So bake and close. We'll just hit bake. Let it bake. We're making a cake. It's going to be fun. Let's jump into Photoshop. We'll grab those. Let me close this. We don't need these anymore. And we'll go open. And they're called week 12. So look, it made them already. Let's grab those and open. Open. Man, Photoshop's been running really slow lately. It's really weird. Okay, so here's what we got. Looks cool, right? Although, what does this tell us? Nothing much. We want to see this on the actual object. So we're going to go and actually load this on the object. Let me see. Did it make an alpha channel? I'm going to delete that alpha channel because I don't need it for this. And then I'm just going to resave that file. I'm going to do the same thing for the Targa. I'm sure it made an alpha channel for this too. So I'm going to delete that. Delete. Yes. If you don't want the alpha channel, just do it as something else, but don't do JPEGs because they have artifacts. Targas are uncompressed. That's why I typically end up using them, and you can also put an alpha in there. So if you need to, you can put an alpha. You can use PNGs. That's fine too. Either way. All right, back to Maya. Select the low poly. Let's hide the high poly. Control H, so it doesn't interfere. Now I'm gonna warn y'all that it's probably going to look wrong in Maya, and that is because Maya's viewport just sucks at showing this stuff. So I will show it in another viewport as well. What happened there? I hit... Oh, I think we're getting our whole thing. Yeah, my window's coming off on another screen again. All right, pause. Okay, so if you guys are running this problem where you're trying to open a Maya window and it doesn't open, there's a couple ways to fix it. Maybe more than that, but one that I know is you can go into your documents preference folder and just delete your preferences. But I don't like to do that. So the other way, let me just show you here, just type in Maya off screen, watch this tutorial, and basically what you need to do is you basically, when you go to make the window, you hit Alt and then you hit spacebar and you'll get like a little tile that'll pop up. In fact, I'll show you an example. Just let me put this on here. So this is, why are we not getting everything that I want? Textures, 2D textures. This is weird. Maya's doing some weird stuff here. Let's just do PSD file for now. Okay, Maya's acting weird. Not sure why. Let me do this one more time though. So let me go here. If I go to color and I hit that, so that pops up. If it's off screen, you hold Alt, hit tab or hit space, and you get this thing that pops up, and you click move, and you see my cursor turn to a crosshair, and then you use your arrow keys, and you have to start moving your arrow keys around. I'm using my arrow keys to just move this thing. So that's how I got it back. That's basically the secret. Now, why all my regular things are not showing up in here, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maya's borked or something. Is it in here? The usual file. I just see PSD file. I don't see the regular file. Well, we can use a PSD. I'd rather not, but we can. Why is my regular file not in here? Very strange things happening. Not sure why. Let's do this. Let's close that. Let's open up the Hypershade. You guys don't see me do this often because I do sometimes use it, but so okay, actually the Hypershade is off window. So let's hit this again. Hit Alt, hit spacebar while you're holding Alt. You see, you get the thing up there. Go to move. See how the cursor comes up, the crosshairs. Now I'm just hitting my arrow key over. Oh, there it is. Boom. So if you ever run into that, that's how you get rid of it. Okay, so we're gonna go to this. That's the wood. We actually want this, just a regular Lambert, and I'm gonna right click next to this and go break connection. So that gets rid of that. And I'm just gonna make sure nothing's in there. No, nothing's in there. So I'm just clicking on that. Okay, that's popping up. Okay, what's going on here? It should be in here. This is very strange, and Maya's not loading all of my stuff. There it is. Why was that not into the regular thing? I do not know. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this manually. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take this. I held shift and selected that, and I'm going to hit this graph. It's going to graph 2 of them out, and I'm going to go ahead and grab these 2, bring this over here. Now this is just the node for your file, so you can just go ahead and just get your file right here. So we'll use that block color right there and say open. So now that's up in there, and then I'm just going to take this out color and connect it to the color there. And so now if we hit 6 on our keyboard, whoa, there it is. Okay, that was a complicated way to get to do what I was trying to do before, but that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so for the bump map, we're going to go ahead and just go bump map, see if it works this time. 2D. I guess, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this and do that. It's going to connect everything for me, but I don't want to use, my, what do you call it? I'm not going to use the PSD. Instead of using a PSD, I'm just going to delete that part out. And I'm going to go file, pull this in, and then connect this out alpha to the bump. And then in here, this is just, you could use any kind of file. So then I can go and grab that target. Okay, so now we've got this in here. Now, one thing I forgot is you got to come back over here to the bump. You can select it right there. Change this to tangent space normal map. And then we can ramp up the power of that if we want. And we can look at this, and what do you know? Look at that. It actually looks right for once. Why did... That's interesting. No problems there. So you got the normal map. I've had issues before with Maya's viewport not showing right. I'm going to close this. Okay. So there you go. That's how you can get a normal bump. Now watch this. We'll go create. We'll create a point light. I'm just going to show you how this will work. Let's hit 7 on the keyboard. So now it's lit. So you can see, as you move this thing around, you can see how this is actually just a flat surface, but because the map is defining that these normals right here are pointing in a different direction based on, of course, our high poly's original normals, that is showing that this is in shadow because they're saying the light's hitting it from this direction, so then this would be in shadow. Now it's not changing the profile. You can see when you look at the side, it doesn't look the same, right? Or I should say, it looks flat. You know, you don't have like anything popping off of the surface. But man, does it give a good, it's a good trick, right? It really looks like it actually is. So there you go. That's normal maps, kind of in a nutshell. I like to block it out for you guys. Okay, I'll stop. All right, so what else can you do with this? Let's pull up something I was working on last night. Look at this. Oh my gosh, what is that? Don't get scared. Don't get scared. I was making a brick wall in Substance Designer. Look at that. So same thing. Looks really cool. Looks like it's popping off the surface. Okay, but when we turn to the side, it's actually flat. What? Yep, it's actually flat. Looks like it's really lit and amazing, but it's really just a flat wall. Pretty amazing what you can do with this stuff. This looks really complicated, but if you guys if you jump into Substance, it's not that hard to learn. You can probably in 3 hours learn, you know, some interesting techniques and start making some materials. Like just sit down for 3 hours, download the educational version. And Allegorithmic, the company that puts out Substance, well, it's owned by Adobe now. They bought them, but that company, they have great tutorials. So you don't even have to. I mean, there are some really good pay for tutorials too, but you can learn all the like easy basic stuff for free, and you could download it for free. So all this stuff here, it looks really complicated, but a lot of it's just like layered noises and layered shapes of, you know, of bricks and stuff like that. So it's not as complicated as it, you know, it may seem complicated, but it's just really, it's not as bad as you think. Anyway, that's normal maps in a nutshell, and that's the oh, here, let me show you these. I didn't even show you what the normal looks like. So this is what the normal looks like for that. Here's a height map. This is what the height map looks like. That's giving me parallax occlusion. That's what makes it look like they're really dipping in and going out. The normal map is giving more of the details. And then we have an ambient occlusion. So this is giving some detail stuff too, making it look like dark and light. We have roughness. This is the more closer to white it is, the more rough it will be. So you can see this is a pretty light texture. If I was to, you know, take this and actually go and lower the white down, this brick will become shiny eventually. Let's go like this. So now we have shiny brick, so it looks like it's wet. But you can do stuff like that to simulate wetness. Like if it's raining in a game, you could take all the roughness maps and like and change the white layer. Okay, so this is all kind of all wrapped up into making, you know, a good decent material. This is what the diffuse looks like, or color map looks like. And it's really neat stuff. So there's so much more to this. There's a lot to learn if you want to get into it. But a good place to start would be learning Substance. You can download it for free. You can watch all kinds of tutorials for free. Just little by little get into it. Start off with simple, easy projects like I just showed, like this one. And you'll be well on your way of being able to do this kind of work. It's you know, it's a lot, but any of you guys have gotten this far into the semester, you guys could do something like this, no problem. Okay, guys, hope everyone's well. Hope you guys are staying safe, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other a semester coming soon. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye-bye.